This is our podcast, We Grow Together by Gerber Finance. Hi, I'm Jen Palmer, CEO of Gerber Finance. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're the leading financing partner for companies experiencing accelerated growth to achieve sustainable profit. Here, we cover everything from partnerships, growth, profit, and culture. Are you ready to grow? Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our podcast, We Grow Together. This is our first video podcast, and today's episode is a partnership spotlight, Gerber Finance and Choice Logistics. We are so happy to have Matthew McKeever, CEO of Choice Logistics, join our podcast. Welcome, Matthew, and thank you so much for making time for us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Pleasure being here with you.
I'm so excited to dive in. Would you mind just sharing a little bit with our listeners about your background personally, as well as your company, Choice Logistics? What does Choice do, and how do you help clients?
Sure. I'm a finance, accounting individual by trade. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Been here most of my life. Never had the ambition to be a CEO. In fact, I was asked a question throughout my career that I want to do the CEO thing, and I always said no. CFO was my ambition, but Choice Logistics presented me a unique opportunity, and I capitalized on that. But what we do at Choice is we operate in about 100 countries around the world, about 600 warehouse locations. We provide warehousing, inventory, transportation services to companies that manufacture, sell, install, or service very technical equipment. And so we're a logistics company providing them logistics services on a global basis, 24/7, 365. Most of our clients are supporting critical infrastructure around the world. That could be governments, utilities, banks, hospitals. And so Choice and Choice's employees feel very fortunate to support, I think, communities and essential services, particularly in time like the last couple of years we've been in. So it's been exciting for all of us and very rewarding in a lot of ways.
Well, Matthew, given your background, given that you have this mathematical economics background and experience, and being a CEO was not necessarily your goal, it's very unique to many of our other clients. Usually the CEO doesn't have that finance background, and really the pain part of their management process and what they have to think about is thinking about how do they finance their company. But for you, this was probably enjoyable to think about, although it's always stressful. Could you maybe talk to us a little bit about your journey to find a financial partner? How did it begin, and how did you ultimately decide on ABL?
Sure. So, yeah, just starting with finances and as my background, I always really enjoyed the aspect of business, which was understanding how operational and strategic actions would lead to financial consequences. That to me was business and was finance, and I think that probably led to the foundation that I needed to do what I'm doing today, because I see those things very clearly. It's funny when I left my last company and came to Choice. One of the things I look forward to is I would never have to finance a company again, and I found myself financing a company with Gerber. But it was an absolute incredible experience. What I would tell you, I mean, it was a very challenging time for our company. A lot of difficult decisions being made. We really could not find a financial partner that saw our vision or saw my vision and wanted to support us through a transformation. And we were fortunate to be introduced to Gerber. As I've told you on a number of occasions, Jennifer, it's been the best relationship I've had with any lending partner in my entire career, and I've had many.
Thank you.
Gerber's been outstanding, supportive in all sorts of ways to us at Choice, and couldn't be happier to have found Gerber. And I was born on December 31st, 1973, so New Year's Eve is my birthday every year, and we happen to close our financing on Friday, December 29th of 2017, a day which I will not forget, and a good way to celebrate my birthday and celebrate the new year that year. So
I will never forget that birthday of yours. Indeed, I think we closed around 4:00, and of course, the Fed cutoff is 5:30, so we kept it very close. But I was definitely, blowing out candles that night too, and wishing you a happy birthday because it was a relationship we're so excited about. And when we came and we met you, for us it's we say this all the time, but it's all about the relationships. But between meeting you and the founder Michael, we're just so excited about the relationship. But it was also an interesting time that we met you. There had been some challenges in the past, but at the same time the company was really starting to grow. Would you mind talking about how, first off, how the financing helped you grow, but also what were some of those challenges along the way and how Choice overcame them?
Sure. Well, the financing for us was critical for a couple of reasons. One, we were going to have to extend some working capital to help grow the company, and so capital was needed to support those new clients that were coming on board. We were in the midst of some pretty significant restructuring activities inside the company, and so these are one-time, fairly large expenses for Choice that needed to be funded. Um, and then lastly, we're going through some technology transformation, which requires some investing as well. And so these were sort of what I was saying, large one-time expenses that we needed somebody, a lending partner that saw our vision and really believed in what we were doing to help support that. And so it was critical for us because I saw the opportunity. I was very clear on what we were going to do, and wanted to find a financial partner that saw the same thing I did. And really, what that meant inside of our business and our company is we had to shed our largest client and let them know that we didn't think that they were a good fit for us anymore, and vice versa. That was a very difficult decision for our company and for our founder and for me, and also obviously very difficult for me to articulate to a lending partner coming in how that made good sense. But we also had to rationalize the markets we were serving. We were primarily serving the U.S. market. We were primarily servicing on-demand deliveries inside the United States, and the market we were serving was data storage. And it just so happened all three of those things were actually contracting every year. The U.S. was shrinking, on-demand transportation was shrinking, and data storage as a vertical was experiencing a lot of acquisition and was becoming very procurement driven. And so the economics around those things were not good, and we had a heavy concentration of clients in the U.S. with on-demand deliveries and data storage. And so I saw that as pivotal in moving away from that. And so the decision to make that change, I think, was daunting for us, but was critical, and it changed the way in which we sought out clients. It changed the way we saw good clients and good business for Choice. It changed how we designed our organization and the kind of people we recruited. And it changed the way we developed process and technology. And we embarked on that, starting in the beginning of 2018 after Gerber came in at the end of 17 and supported us with financing. And certainly 18 through 19 were challenging years. 19 that being a very successful year for us, but it was a tough year because it was a tough year to grow. But I mean, the relationship with Gerber was absolutely critical to us accomplishing that transformation and on those objectives. So.
You talk about that decision to let go of your biggest customer. And I remember those conversations that we had. And you're right, it was early days in our relationship. And I just remember when you delivered the news to us. I want you to know, if I haven't told you this before, my takeaway was, oh my goodness, we have a CEO who realizes top line doesn't cure all. Finally, and it's no disrespect for others. I mean that a little bit joking, but you realize that, you don't eat top line, you eat bottom line. And at the end of the day, sales and profit are two very different things. And, it doesn't always correlate. And sometimes the hardest decision is to scale back a business, but ultimately that could lead to increasing profits. And, I know that was a very difficult decision. Obviously, looking back in hindsight, it was clearly the right one, but that was a tough decision. And you had to make that pretty early on, as well as, coming into your position. But it was the right decision. And so, right, sometimes, the right decisions are just really, really hard. But you made that and you communicated that to us, and you got us to understand it very quickly. And, we supported, the company and your decision personally through it. But we also appreciated just how difficult that must have been on you and scary at the time.
Yes, I think I remember the day I called Joe. I was in Atlanta. at our distribution center. So I vividly remember the room I was in, the conversation that we had. Because it was a big decision for us.
Yeah.
It took a year and a half to make that decision. And you study um, um, consequences, and you study decisions, and you try to be very intelligent and educated on all of those, but you never can, quite predict 100% accuracy around that. And so and you're changing the direction of a company. Um,
Yeah.
I take that very personally, that it's my responsibility to make sure it goes correctly. And I think it's like anything else in life. It's probably a combination of intelligence, but then also a little bit of luck as well. So,
I think that's a little bit humble of you, but I think you made some really great strategic decisions along the way. But yeah, definitely, but tough decisions. One of the things, I mean, a lot has changed for Choice over the years since we've been working together. But one of the things that has definitely changed is, the balance of debt and equity on your balance sheet since, we first started working together to where we are today. And it's one of the things we do talk about quite often is any healthy company should have a good balance between debt and equity on their balance sheet. Would you mind talking just a little bit about how the balance of debt and equity on Choice's balance sheet has changed as your business has grown? Because, although there were some initial challenges with Choices, when we met, the company was always in this high growth trajectory. And sometimes that's just as challenging, right, as having the opposite problem. Ultimately, cash flow is an issue. So, always keeping an eye on financing and managing debt and equity is a challenge. If you wouldn't mind just touching on that.
sure, sure. I mean, I'll start with this. I mean, Choice's perspective has always been to reinvest any excess cash flow and equity back into the business, and so that's been the DNA of the company, certainly since I joined Choice, but even predating me. I think when we closed our financing in December of 2017, we had roughly $6 million worth of debt and maybe a little more than $1 million of overall net equity. And obviously, Gerber was able to get their head around that situation and how that was going to change, and that was certainly appreciated. Today, 3.5 years later, we have roughly, approximately $9 million worth of equity in the company, and
Huge change.
and our debt balance is zero at this
I
point
think
in
it's
time.
negative, actually. I think it's negative. I think we owe you money.
So it's been a delightful transformation from an overall balance sheet health standpoint. The balance sheet health is something I talk about at every company update that we have each quarter. I certainly talk about it with our clients. I think it's important for our employees and our clients to know that the company is liquid, has adequate cash flows to reinvest into the business, and it's got a strategy and vision about where it wants to go, and it's got the capital to go execute on it. So that's certainly, as a finance guy, maybe I take some extra attention to the balance sheet, but it's something I pay attention to, and I watch quite closely. So.
But it sounds like profitability was a high priority for you as well since day one, right? Making sure that this company runs profitable. And that's not necessarily every business owner's priority for different reasons, but for Choice, this was important for you, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. As you said earlier, I think as maybe my finance background, I've got a certain way that I look at things, but it starts with business is to some extent it's not every business is the same in a lot of ways as far as I look at it. It's you need to find clients with good relationships that are servicing markets and that they're growing. And I had a mentor tell me once, sometimes business is as simple as finding the right clients that are growing and just developing the relationship with them, and all of a sudden you grow along with them. And so for me, looking at the market verticals we were servicing, making sure we picked market verticals that were growing, that we selected services within those verticals that were growing, and then looking at the clients in those verticals consuming those services that we felt were top tier clients. A and B were very open to partnership oriented relationships. That's where we're most effective, and we're able to do that and you focus on that. That's when you begin to change the profitability profile of the company. And so I get less worried about revenue. I get more worried about solid strategies, solid partnerships, good business, and the revenue will come along with it along the way. And that's really what's happened at Choice. We've seen, our margins, increase, 500 or 600 basis points in the 3.5 years we've gone through our transformation. This year alone, we're up 15% on revenue year over year, which is fairly dramatic given the environment we've been in the last 18 months. And all that didn't happen in the last 6 or 12 months. All of that is happening because of what we put in motion 3.5 years ago when Gerber stepped into our relationship and supported our strategy and supported our transformation. And a lot of that comes down to, there's good business, and good business is profitable business. And that's certainly the way I approach it.
It sounds like a very successful strategy, and one that you implemented ahead of time really paid off. And as you had mentioned, the last 18 months. Now, obviously, Choice is an international company, and is this global supply chain crisis. So, it would be interesting for our listeners to know a little bit about how Choice was impacted by the supply chain crisis and how you dealt with it.
Sure. Yeah, I just did a global business review last night with a client, and I had a couple of slides on current state of our business and macroeconomics, and really kind of what's transpired over the last 18 months and how that's affected supply chain in general, and then overall how it's affected Choice. But we've seen generally speaking, because we're supporting clients that are making equipment for critical infrastructure, we've seen consumption of our services and the importance of our services actually increase over the last 18 months. Now, what I would tell you is that given the solid relationships that we built the years prior to that certainly supported the foundation for that growth. But we've seen probably a rapid expansion, of our revenue services into that client base in the last 18 months. What we're seeing at a macro level is wages are under a lot of pressure. Recruiting is becoming more difficult and taking longer. And I think just in general, the overall environment has been such that our clients want their distribution hubs to be local to their manufacturing. And our clients are beginning to stock more inventory as things like Brexit occur. Really what that's requiring is more inventory and consumption of more services. In a lot of ways, it's a little bit counterintuitive, but the supply chain has become less efficient in the last couple of years as trade has become a little bit more difficult around the globe. And when the supply chain becomes less efficient, from our standpoint, clients are consuming our services more, stocking more inventory. They've got more trade activity. They're shipping more. And what they're trying to do now is to begin to take actions to compete against that inefficiency. And one of those actions has been moving distribution hubs close to their manufacturing and the like. So that's kind of, from a macro standpoint, that's kind of what we're seeing in our business and how that's affected our company and supply chain.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Now, every month at Gerber, we go through our entire portfolio and we talk about all of our clients. And that way, everybody within the company, key management, key decision makers, know what's going on in the company in case somebody's unavailable. That decisions can still be made, and so to ensure that we've got close ties to clients. And every month, hands down, every month, year after year, when we get to Choice Logistics, what always comes up? Matthew McKeever, one of the best operators we've ever seen. Truly, you are an incredible operator, and any business owner or business leader who's listening to this podcast is so lucky to hear from you, because what you have done is just absolutely incredible. And they'd be so lucky to sit down with you. And I bet if I was a business owner, I would want to ask you, if I had the time to sit with you, what have you learned through this journey? And is there anything that you would do differently?
Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words. I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from anybody, but certainly a lot coming from you.
Thank you.
I think I've learned a lot about people, I guess, and for us, our whole business is people, more so than anything. And when you're in the service business, that's the most important thing, is to have great people. And I learned a lot about myself, for sure, through this journey, but I spent a lot of time traveling the globe the 4 years leading up to 2020, because I wanted all of our employees to to know me, and I wanted to know them, because I felt like a relationship um, with me was important, and it was important for me personally, but I also think it was important for them. And that approach, I think, gave us an incredible foundation for the success we're having today. Um, it's 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 how it's how I am personally. I'm a relationship person. Character is a big thing to me. I had a manager tell me once that you can't teach character. You can teach anybody anything, but character is something you can't teach. And so, I'll never forget those words. But I think for me, I just learned how important people are to a business. And if you develop relationships and you invest time in relationships, and people understand that you're committed to their success, personally and professionally, and whatever that means to them, I think that goes a long way in that relationship. And ultimately, what that does is it gives you an incredible foundation for teamwork, for collaboration, and for just an outstanding workforce and high performing workforce. And that's really what I've learned. I probably, I felt like I knew that prior to being a choice, but to go out and do it, live it, and see it, I think was exhilarating, and it was extremely rewarding for me. I think to see people respond to that interaction and to that personal investment that I was making, and to see how important it was to me, and to see their reaction to that. So I think I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the importance in business and personal relationships, and certainly learned that by far the most important differentiator in business is your culture. The people you have around you.
I definitely couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, it's all about relationships. It's not really about what we do; it's who we work with. That's the game changer, and that's what makes it enjoyable or non enjoyable. And I think I think your advice about relationships is so critical, and it really is applicable to any industry. Is there anything specific for your industry, or for anybody starting out in supply chain industry? Any advice you would give them? That's any nuances for your industry that people should think about?
Yeah, the best advice I could give you is just be very close to your customer. Um, if you understand their business and your business and how the two intersect, and you're invested in making them successful, um, I mean, you'll be successful. The best advice I could possibly give is be close to your client, and um, and focus on that, because that's the guiding light in the world that we're in. And so it sounds very simple, um, but oftentimes people, I should say oftentimes, sometimes people get lost in business or in the world that they're in. But if you have that as your guiding light, you'll be very successful in logistics for sure. And certainly with in any service industry, you'll be successful for sure.
I think that's great advice. Absolutely. And looking ahead, do you see your industry changing? I mean, the world is changing at rapid speed. I'm sure your industry is no different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's tough to predict the change, but it's incredible the amount of transformation that's going on around logistics, in transportation, and the way that inventory is handled. It's Technology is so important. I won't say it's more important than people, but it's a close second. In your ability to maintain a modern technology stack and application architecture, and your ability to maintain processes that are constantly innovating and staying current with your client's business as it's changing and quickly evolving, I think becomes the challenge. And to me, that's the biggest challenge I think that I see in front of us, is keeping up with that change and being sure your investments are made in a very judicious way. It's such that you can't keep up with the change, but they're
Yeah.
also efficient investments, and that can be quite a challenge. But it's exciting. I mean, I love the world of logistics. I love the clients that we serve, and what we do, and making sure we maintain a sound investment posture. We stay current. We view ourselves as being leaders in innovation. I think to me is sort of sort of where my head is.
Well, I'm always so excited to see what Choice is going to do tomorrow, because if anyone can keep up with that rapid change, it's certainly you, and it's certainly Choice. And the timing of this podcast is so interesting, because as you had touched on earlier, your need for debt has changed so much over the last few years, and it's really fair to say that today you certainly don't need Gerber Finance, and you really don't need financing at all because of the changes that you've made. So now looking back, because really it's sort of we're full circle. What's your big takeaway from just the financing journey and this your whole relationship with Gerber and ABL particularly, actually, that you could share with others?
Well, I mean, just not to be redundant, but I mean, the relationship with Gerber was by far the biggest value and differentiator. I think from a structure standpoint, the ABL was very flexible. It allowed us to maximize availability, available liquidity. At the same time, it was administratively appropriate, so it wasn't administratively burdensome. And so for us, it was a really good match for our company because our asset was account receivable. And so therefore to be able to get a base upon borrowing on that asset, and that's the asset also that's growing most quickly. And so that enhances your availability. I think it was a super structure for us over the past couple of years as we grew, we transformed, and we need to fund working capital and some investments we're making. So overall, I think the guidance that Gerber provided us around structure, around the ABL itself, around using account receivable as the basis of borrowing, in the way in which the relationship and the borrowing base was administered was, it was just outstanding. It was an outstanding experience. And while I'm a finance guy by trade, financing companies is not my expertise, and so having a true partner in Gerber bring that expertise forward and suggest a structure that worked for us as a company as we were growing and as we were transforming, I think was incredibly valuable to us.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. You certainly made it so easy. I mean, like you said earlier, it's all about relationships. And usually I close with a Gerber growth tip of the week. And I would absolutely steal yours, that it's all about relationships in any industry that you're in. But certainly if you're in service, you got to stay close to your customers. You got to stay close to your clients. I know for me personally, it only makes my job more enjoyable, but also you learn a lot by staying close to your clients. And you have taught me so much over the years that I'm so appreciative. I'm so grateful. And it has just been one of the most amazing relationships. And we've talked previously offline that no matter what happens, this will always be a relationship. And, one that I'm grateful for, but one that I know that'll continue. Even if the dynamics change a little bit, it will certainly always be there. So I really appreciate your partnership over the past several years, and really appreciate you joining us today to film this.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Jennifer. And again, I appreciate you just as much as you appreciate me. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And for our listeners at home, if you have a question or a comment, you can reach out at info@gerberfinance.com. Please remember to subscribe, follow, and rate our podcast. Thank you all for listening. And Matthew, thanks so much again.
You bet. Take care.